Okay. All right. We're on with Stephen. It's Nemeth, right?
Thank you for asking. It is. I have a
Stephen
great story
Nemeth.
about
I
it.
have a bio for him that reads like no other bio I've seen. Formed and heads up Rhino Films, the independent film company that originated as a division of the iconic classic record label Rhino Records. He's produced and executive produced dozens of films, including The Sessions, which was a Sundance 2012 Audience Award, as well as an Academy Award nomination in 2013 for Helen Hunt, COG, another Sundance 2013, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Why Do Fools Fall in Love? Radio Free Albemuth and the upcoming Fear and Loathing in Aspen. He's in pre-production on the adaptation of the New York Times best-selling book Confessions of an Economic Hitman and on Hunter S. Thompson's The Curse of Lono. His documentary credits include Dogtown and the Z-Boys, which was an audience award at Sundance 2001. War Dance, which is a beautiful movie about the Ugandan, war-torn Ugandan country.
Child soldiers.
Yeah. Fuel, another Sundance Award, Audience Award, Flow, 2008 Sundance, Climate Refugees, 2010 Sundance, Robert Williams, Mr. Bitchin, the Hot Rod King of all the legacy of hot rods. My mentor in art school is a hot rodder and just loves Robert Williams. Good Fortune, Higher Love from the Slam Dance 2020 Grand Jury Prize, Kiss the Ground, and 137 Shots. And if that's not enough, he's a member of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and on the board of numerous nonprofit organizations, including Friends of the Earth, Children Uniting Nations, the Wildlife Eco Station, the Woodstock Film Festival, and he's on the advisory board of the Full Frame Documentary Festival. Nemeth has served on boards of Wheels for Humanity, Shine On Sierra Leone, One Voice, the Veggie Man organization, and he's an advisor to the Dean's Board of UC Santa Cruz's School for the Arts. He was a consultant for Admatech, a prostate cancer research foundation at the Harvard Medical School, and he is a UCLA graduate. And you would think that he's probably about 153 years old to have all those accomplishments on his on his bill here. Welcome you to Conversations with Extraordinary Men, the Man to Man, a series of interviews with just like great people, conversations. I welcome you, and it's great to be your friend, and it's great to have you on the show.
You're very kind, and had you not been an extraordinary man, I wouldn't be here. So touche, brother. And the thing at the end of my resume or bio or CV should read, and if you haven't figured it out by now, not a Republican.
Yes, absolutely. By the same token, I mean, and I didn't want to get too much into this but it's going to happen, into talking about just about your films, because I wanted to talk about you. But your films are socially aware, I'd say, socially conscious films. They are films that are, I don't see much fluff in there.
I appreciate that.
What's
There's
that?
plenty of fluff to go around, and other people can do that.
Absolutely, but I mean, there's a lot of substance. From what I've seen, there's a lot of integrity that goes into the films that I've seen. I haven't seen them all, I'll admit, but I've got them on my list now. But Yeah, I mean, it's a really, I mean, to make that decision um, is a big stance, I think. And I'd like to hear you say a little bit of something of where does that come from? I mean, not everybody has that. A lot of people are just out for, I want to do the biggest blockbuster. I want to, I want to study the markets and find out exactly what's going to sell and how it's going to sell, and we'll write the script for that. And that doesn't seem to be the case here.
I really appreciate you, making note of that. I think partly it's selfish because it's just the kind of things, the kind of topics and subjects that interest me personally that could conceivably move the needle and make, the world a little safer, a little better, a little cleaner. But also because it's a Sisyphusian task really to try and compete with, let's just call it Marvel today, because that's a sort of, in many respects, it's become the brand name for, big budget studio movies. And I'd rather just go against the grain and hit, forgive the baseball metaphor, but a solid single, every time I go out. The other thing is that when people say to you, well, what kind of movies you make? And the short answer for me is what's worth making, I mean, if to be perfectly honest, I am developing a very big budget action film, but it's an anti-gun movie. And we can get into that later because there's a reason to make that film, even though the subject matter, the genre doesn't typically interest me. Movies are really hard to get made. Most of them really, don't resonate or frankly are just shitty. And it's important to actually set out to make something that actually has a reason to be made from the get-go. Because even if you fail, if you make something that's completely subpar or not anywhere near what you had expected for it, you can at least say with a clear conscience, I set out to make something. Here's the reason I spent the time, energy, and effort on it. Here's the reason we got all these great people to work on it, because it was worth tackling that material. Did we achieve our goal? Unfortunately, not on this one, but with a clear conscience, you can say, yeah, I tried. And frankly, if you make a movie that has absolutely zero value and it's crappy, then who are you? I don't know. I don't really get it. I also am dyslexic and I have ADD and I have limited amounts of I can only focus on so many things at one time. I promise you I will hyper focus on you. But because my reading skills, for instance, are they're fine, but I sometimes have to reread things, etc. But I would rather in many respects, I would rather, much like a biography of, let's say, Eleanor Roosevelt, I would rather watch a documentary that at least I learn from, even if it's not particularly good, or read a piece of nonfiction, a biography of something, even if it's not somebody that is terribly interesting to me, because I'm learning something, I'm enriching myself. But if you go out and watch a piece of, a crappy movie or a bad piece of fiction, it's not a great use of time, personally. Having said that, a great piece of fiction and an occasional great movie is tough to beat. So, but that's just not my jam, and that's not what I have the focus and passion for.
Right. Yeah. It's like one of my teachers says that the only thing she wants to engage herself with is something that she can learn from, or something that's going to make her laugh.
Right.
And it's like
that's right.
It's so right on. Why else? Why would you want to be involved in something else?
Yeah.
Laughter and learning. I mean,
I say that all the time, and whoever this person is, I bow to her altar.
Yeah, her name is Guru Jagat.
Guru Jagat.
Yes.
Shout out to you. If you're going to make a comedy, it better be funny. If you're going to make a thriller, it better be thrilling. If you're going to make a drama, it better be dramatic. Mm-hmm. But again, I'd rather laugh or learn, and that's it. The thing I find fascinating now is the obsession with horror films. There are a couple of good ones. I remember one as a child called The Beast of Five Fingers. It did its job. It scared me and kept me up for about 10 years. But I'm told that because I keep on asking, what is with this obsession with horror? What I kind of gleaned, and from what people have said to me, is that it's such a scary time for kids, for everybody, but primarily, let's say teenagers or preteens, that and it's so out of their control that they rather go to see a movie that they know is going to scare the shit out of them, that they're controlling. So they're being petrified and scared on their own terms, so they can somehow justify that real life isn't as scary because it's really scary. And there's some. I mean, I'm not sure that I actually conveyed that, as eruditely as I should have, but it makes a lot of sense if you can sort of pick out the nuggets of what I'm trying to say. Kids would rather control their horror, their pain, their fright, than be in the absence of the control of those things. And that may be why there's so much of an attraction to the horror genre, particularly with that demographic.
Absolutely. And I think there's something, looking back to the Greeks, there's something cathartic about that. It's in a sense better to live through that in an artificial sense than it is to actually have that in your life.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
you just said what I should have said.
That's okay.
Much more.
That's what conversations are for. You elaborate, and I'll try to bring it back home. So on this whole subject of making a good film, it's sort of like this. I don't know if you know Trungpa, the Rinpoche Trungpa, the Tibetan Buddhist, talks about goodness. He says innately in all of us there is this goodness, and it depends on how it is guided in your life and how it comes out, and it's there. You can always choose it. It's always there. It's all, and we all know it too. But at the same time, it's like we grow up with different influences, and we grow up with role models. And I'm wondering, who were your role models? Did you have strong male role models when you were growing up, or is this something you got later in life? Or, I grew up in a socially. I mean, my grandparents grew up in the Depression. They were social democrats. That's where I got my thing. But I was wondering, where do you get yours? Where does it come from? Who's your strong male role model in your family or outside of your family?
Well, it's a loaded question. I loved my parents. My dad was a scholar. He was a psychoanalyst, a Freudian analyst, who I'm not certain would be totally down with Sigmund today, but he was a very bright, interesting, gentle, incredible, generous soul. He was in my mother. So I looked up to him and loved him beyond, even though he was an odd duck. My mother was a spy, by the way, during World War II. She was in the OSS, met my father in the Royal Army Medical Corps.
Wow.
Went to the Royal Army Medical Corps at a Christmas party at the Sacre Hotel in Vienna. They tell this crazy, fun story about having fallen in love in a very dispassionate way, but a very beautiful way, how he somehow or another, he cleaned her shoes before she packed them in her suitcase before she was flying back to LA. And that was the moment she realized she loved this man. Not the most titillating moment, but beautiful in its own simplicity. My mom then became a clean air activist in LA in the 60s. And in 1966, a bunch of cool people started an organization called Stamp Out Smog. And I still have a piece of their stationery, and I should have had a lot of visual cues. Look, Paul Newman, the really interesting people in those days. But then she was considered part of the radical fringe by our then mayor, Sam Yorty, which I thought was kind of bitching. When I was a kid, I thought, wow, my mom's a radical. That's kind of cool. So I looked up to her quite a bit. And I think that it really takes me maturing personally and getting older to realize who in my life were really special that I didn't realize at the time, that I didn't give props to or kudos to at the time. Most of whom I can't thank or shout out to now because they're gone, which is a real problem. And I think I've learned to be more in the moment and tell people how I feel about them, you know, on a more regular basis and in real time. But I mean, I had scores of role models, and frankly, the people that I worship and not worship, I don't worship anybody, that I look up to and really appreciate, obviously, are the common man who basically get up in the morning and work hard. A common woman, sorry, they work hard, they take care of their families, they pay their taxes, they recycle, ideally, they, you know, just good, normal people, just really make me happy and make me, I don't know, make me tick. There's, you know, Morris Dees from the Southern Poverty Law Center, who took down the Klan, you know, which is just a remarkably brave thing to do. I adore that man. There are some folks in politics today that I really, really admire and appreciate and love and adore. Some on a personal level: Congressman Jamie Raskin, Congressman Adam Schiff, Congressman Mark Takano, I talked to you about, from your hometown of of Riverside. I'm, you know, I am, you know, I mean, honestly, I'm a pushover for a good person. I'm a pushover for somebody who will do things that are expected of them, like picking up their dog's poo. You know, I'll give them a thumbs up when I drive by. I don't know, people that somehow cheat the system in malicious and irritating and harmful ways just piss me off. You know, I really didn't answer your question, but I think I kind of gave an overview of what, you know, who excites me. Martin Luther King, of course. I mean, you know, these people are just crazy and cool and heroic. And then there's this, you know, little cutie pie from oh, come on, Greta Thunberg. You know, I mean, come on, she's just taking on everybody, and she's so special and genuine. You know, that's a hero. That's a modern hero.
Yeah. You said something that was very interesting that earlier, and that there were a lot of people that influenced you earlier in your life, and who it's sort of like they influenced you into the future. It's like we learn a lot of things that we or we kind of download them. I think, I don't know how we process them, but they get processed into our brain somehow, our processor, and they stay there. And then at some time they get activated in the future, and you go, oh wow, I remember, you know, he told me about that. Like years and years and years ago when I was a kid, told me about this, you know, and it's like, wow, it just like pops up out of nowhere. It's
these are, you know, I actually do think about, you know, the things I say to younger people, and I want to make sure it resonates. And one day I would love for whoever he or she is to answer this same question. Yeah, there was this guy Steve, you know, and he said something so special to me, and I remember, you know, holding my head up and whatever. It's not as though we go into our lives consciously trying to do that, because that's actually disingenuous. But I think if you just live life in a way that makes it that is easy and organic to convey good messages and do the right thing, we all win. I'll give you an example of just the world in general. I think that, and you'd mentioned the notion of people being born good, essentially, or not, you know, some words to that effect. And I feel that way too. I feel that we're all genuinely pretty good. You know, is there a Charlie Manson out there? Of course. as I look at you with your long hair and your beard. No, I'm not thinking about Charlie Manson because of you.
Charlie Manson's mother lost him in a card game, you know.
But anyhow, you're much more tender version of Charlie Manson, much more. But you look at a Charlie Manson, you know, maybe he was a bad seed. You know, there are an occasional bad seed. There are occasional bad seeds, but I think we're all basically good. And I think good people will ultimately be forced to do bad things if they're desperate. For instance, will I steal a pizza if my kids are hungry? Yeah, probably. You know, well, I don't think I would kill anybody ever. I know I wouldn't. I might accidentally kill somebody protecting somebody else. But I think if we take away the baseline of desperation in the world, where everybody does get a basic living wage and everybody does have a roof over their head and an address, you know, so that they can function, you know, fully function from, and clothing and an education and basic food and whatever else we need, then we've eliminated desperation. We haven't dissuaded people from being more courageous or more anxious to succeed, or more, or we haven't dissuaded people from
being ambitious,
from soaring to higher heights, for being ambitious.
Yes.
That's it. Let me look that up. That's I was thinking of ambition. Sorry, it just wasn't coming to me. But the reality is we'd be a much better place if everybody were taken care of. And I think that hatred, a lot of it is conflated with resentment or anger and all that sort of thing. So many things would be eliminated. I know it sounds silly and trite, but you know, basic decency can make the world go round. And I know that's a pretty much something that you, I believe, live by. But I was just addressing what you were saying about, you know, bad people or mean people, and we can do so much better. And so by, you know, so many obvious little things that we can do in our lives, it'll actually eliminate so much of the negative.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just by our response, our reaction to things. I think Miles Davis said it perfectly. He said, I'm gonna botch it a little bit here because I don't have the quote right in front of me, but you know, he used to improvise all the time, and he said if you play a wrong note, it's the next note that you play that tells you whether it was right or not. You know.
That's interesting. I don't know. I don't know why I'm just immediately thinking about a great Oscar Levant quote, which is "You only live once, and sometimes less." And and that sort of applies to almost everything we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's not about who you are and what you've done in the past. It's about what you do next. You know, it's the next thing you do that is going to decide everything. So there is this hope for everyone. You know, there is this chance. You know, because there is this goodness in all of us. You know, going back to that, you know, it can happen. You know, it's just,
you know, I'll give you an example of goodness. I mean, I think that for most of us, it feels much better to give a gift to somebody that you know they will love than to receive a gift that you love. It's just, you know, it's so exciting to find the right thing for somebody. And I'm not even talking about birthdays and anniversaries, whatever. I mean, the great moments are where you find something you know someone's going to love and spontaneously get it for them, or acquire it, or deal it and give it to somebody.
Yeah, I mean, and the same goes for, like, if you're teaching somebody. I know you have kids, and this, I'm sure this lights you up all the time when you see one of your kids understanding something, learning something. It's just like, that is like, that's the biggest what takeaway that you can get is to see that light go on in their minds.
By the way, also, you know, a random act of kindness feels good to do, but I am also of the mind that it's really important to acknowledge random acts of kindness. Not that the decent people that are doing it for the right reasons need it, but I need it. And I think sometimes people do need it to need to be told they've done something special and lovely, you know?
Yeah.
And it happens to me all the time. And conversely, you know, if I do something nice for somebody, I hold a door open and they, or an elevator, and they don't even give me eye contact, I should ignore that. I should be bigger than that. But I will sometimes say, you know, you're welcome, you know, you're welcome. And just to maybe point out that they should, for the next random act of kindness, acknowledge that, because I think at some point, some people will stop doing nice things if they're not really, really fully evolved, for one thing. But if they're not feeling like they're getting a return on their investment, which is a terrible way of looking at it, but it's the best I can couch it for now.
Yeah. But again, it's, you know, I'm going to go back to that same thing. It's like you're, you know, in a sense, you're sort of downloading something into this other person. They don't know it, but you're giving your vibration, your what you give off, your presence is going to help them somewhere along the line. It helps push them out the elevator. Helps them keep going. You give them a little bit of energy. You know, they get a little bit of energy. They'll get more if they say thank you.
Yeah.
They get
By the
more.
way, I've got some fabulous random acts of kindness stories that are humorous, and some that make me angry. I told you the story about getting bumped into by that car in the parking lot. Didn't I tell you that?
I think you did.
Well, I mean, I'll get back to that in a second. But a very funny random act of kindness story is that I was, you know, when I used to stay out, I've got kids, and I could be in bed by 8 o'clock now. But you know, 11:30 at night, a movie was over or something. I went to to eat at midnight at Cantor's Delicatessen in L.A. And I was walking in, and there was this woman, you know, who had some scabs on her legs, and she was very dirty and smoking cigarette butts she found, and she was sitting on the ground on the sidewalk. And I just said, "Hey, can I get you something to eat?" And she said, "Yeah, I'd like a chopped liver sandwich." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I walked into the counter and I looked up, and a chopped liver sandwich was like, you know, $9 or $10. And so I went out and I said, you know, I don't have $9 or $10. I did, but I mean, I'd rather give 10 people a bagel. So I just said, "Can I get you something else? I mean, how about a bagel and cream cheese? How about this? How about that?" She said, "Nah, I just wanted, don't worry about it. I just wanted a chopped liver sandwich." It's just a beautiful moment. Like, what she wanted, and I couldn't satisfy her with anything else. I liked it. But conversely, by the way, I was leaving a hotel for a lunch at a hotel. Actually, I was the Four Seasons in Pasadena. I remember it very well. And I got bumped into by a big black Cadillac. I looked down and I was hit, and the car hit me, and it cut my knee, and it cut my pants open at the time. I knew I wasn't particularly I wasn't in jeopardy. I know I was probably got a bruise and a cut or whatever. And an old woman got out of the car, and she looked back and she said, "Well, what did I hit?" And I said, "Well, you hit me, but you got really lucky." And she said, "Well, why?" And I said, "Because you hit me." And because I get it, you know, it happens, you know. And there's two schools of thought there. I mean, I saw my mother in this old woman, you know, and I thought, like, I could just make her life miserable, you know.
Yeah.
I could sue her. I could reprimand her. I could call the police and file a report and get into it with her insurance company and fake some jive injury for, you know, therapy and this and whatever, which is what so many people do, and it's maddening. Or I can just, you know, pay it forward and say, "Don't worry about it. Just, you know, be careful." And I did. And she got in her car and she drove away. And I'm not proud of this moment, but at that moment, I got into my car and I was angry, and I couldn't figure out why I was angry. And I was angry, I think, because she didn't say, "Oh, thanks. That's really generous. That's really nice. That's really thoughtful of you. That's really decent of you." And I shouldn't, that's not the reason we're supposed to do these things, but God, it would help, it would really feel a bit better if they were acknowledged.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I totally understand what you're saying. It's like you sort of want them to be in on the whole thing, because
Yeah.
they're probably not thinking, well, this could be and go into litigation and be there for for the next 10 years. Because those things happen. The lawsuits carry on and on and on and on. And they become your life, and it's like, oh my God, who wants to live with that?
I know. I know.
No matter what side you're on with it. But in a way, you helped her dodge a bullet, and she didn't recognize that she'd been shot at.
Right. But it also is not. It's not a very flattering portrait of myself, and I had to use that moment to self-evaluate because It's embarrassing to have been upset by that.
Mhm.
I should have felt good about that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a what? It's a process of consciousness and becoming, more aware of that thing happening and that it evokes certain feelings in you, and it just happens. You
Mhm.
grow, you get bigger, and you know, and that you notice that, and you have it in your pocket now, and that in that way is like a great gift, that she gave you.
Especially if I see her again.
What's that?
Especially if I see her again.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like, what do they say? I think it was Trungpa again. He said that he said, is this a challenge that you're dealing with, or is it an opportunity? Um, it's like, is it a confrontation, or is it an opportunity? And so many times we think of everything as being sort of conflict. We have to have some sort of conflict resolution with it, and whereas it's an opportunity for us to burn some karma, for us to work on ourselves instead of trying to work on somebody else. Um, because ultimately we can't do anything to change them anyway. Um, that comes into their own jurisdiction. To foster that change. Um, I wanted to ask you. We sort of started to touch on it a little bit, but I know you have a son, and I don't know what you went through as a man, um, and dealing with what was happening in the 60s and 70s with the feminist movement and women's liberation, all of that, and how men were becoming more effeminate and in reaction to all of that, and women were becoming more butch, and but we were still getting inundated with the Marlboro Man and all of those other very macho images in the media. How how did you what kind of difficulties did you have dealing with that kind of thing, and how do you see yourself helping your son through this kind of I don't want to say just struggle, but it's a place for growth, and there is struggle and growth. How do you see yourself as a guide for him, and what difficulties did you have with it when you were growing up?
Well, that's a kind of a tough question. I only because I'm not. I never. And let me backtrack. I think in those days, men who are becoming more in touch with their feminine side, or women becoming more in touch with their male masculine side, they were probably always there, and that it was just sort of the little opening in the door to allow people to become, I think, a bit more of who their authentic self. I think, and today, while this world is a really, really nasty place, I'm making a leap, but to the transgender children are in so much better off today than they were when I was growing up. And I probably grew up with quite a few that I wasn't even aware were struggling, you know, and I wish I had known, because I would love to have been able to be a friend and to have helped somebody through that crisis and that dilemma. My daughter has a little friend. He's identifying as a girl now, and he comes over and they get dressed up in, you know, princess dresses and run around. It's the most beautiful thing, and I can't say it to him or they or her, but I do say to their parents, what a beautiful time for this child to actually be who they are. Mm-hmm. And how great is it now that this child has you two as parents, and not someone who's trying to pray that out of them or beat it out of them, or, you know, the suicide rate amongst that community, the transgender community, is it's like 900 times higher. Forgive me for throwing out something irresponsible, but it's something outrageous.
Yeah.
And with respect to raising my son, I'm very clear with him that I want him to be exactly who he is, or who he wants to be. I out him when I think he's being mean or nasty, which is not often. I laud him when he's showing signs of empathy and decency. And I think he's terribly comfortable in his own skin. And I do give myself a bit of credit for that. I'm not the greatest parent on a lot of levels, because I'm an awful disciplinarian. I really am. I cave on so many things that I think are not in his best interest, but is it the path of least resistance? Is it my aversion to, you know, conflict? And I don't know. But I also think part of it is just wanting to have certain things that I'm not supposed to let him have. A little more sugar, a little more screen time, a little more this, a little more that. When I don't think at the end of the day it's going to impugn the integrity of his life or make him any less of a decent person. It'll just make our relationship probably a little bit better. Will he or does he respect me a little less and probably push the envelope a little harder? I would think so, but I know he loves me, and I know he's pretty happy, and I do know that I've contributed to that. I'm delighted. I know that he'd rather hang out with me than not hang out with me, which is kind of an interesting thing. One day I will be an embarrassment, you know. I mean, he's so sweet. I'll give you an example. So my kids jumped on me yesterday to wake me up, my 6-year-old daughter, my 9-year-old son. And my daughter, who will not tell me she loves me, but I know she does. She said, "Oh, Daddy, your breath is disgusting." You know, I'm waking up at 7 a.m. And my son looks at me and he sort of brushes my hair aside. He said, "It's not disgusting, Daddy. It could be better, but it's not disgusting." It's just such a beautiful thing, you know. Like, that's his way of saying, you know, don't feel so badly. Like, I'm sure it's nasty. Whose breath isn't in the morning, and whose breath couldn't be better?
That's why I wake up before everybody else.
But it's so sweet, and I love an unfiltered child, you know, as long as you're not genuinely hurting someone's feelings, you know. Mm-hmm. It's just a wonderful thing, you know, to be pure and uncensored and authentic. I don't think I answered your question about growing up in the 60s. I really don't. I apologize, but I hope
that's okay.
I hope the diversion was at least interesting enough to make the final cut.
Yeah, I'm not going to pin you to it.
Let me say one thing, by the way. Yeah. I had a twin sister. I have a twin sister, Stephanie, who I'm mad for, and I talk to her pretty much every day. And I had 2 older sisters. I lost the middle sister, but my older sister, Valerie, is fabulous. And so I was technically the youngest of 4 children, and I was the only boy. And I really grew up around girls, and I always loved girls. I've always forgive me for saying this, but our gender is I think inferior to the female gender. I think I don't want to categorize us as male and female because so many of us identify in so many different ways and combinations therein. But I think I had a specific love and appreciation and admiration for women, and I still do. I can't imagine carrying a child. I can't imagine giving birth to a child. I can't imagine, I mean, think about just Mother Earth. She. The lioness is tougher than the lion. The woman, you hear the stories about the child trapped under the car, and the mother can lift the car. I mean, women are superhuman, and they can endure so much more than we can in so many ways.
Oh yeah.
So I think, to answer your question, I wasn't really in touch with the feminine side necessarily, although I did wear, like pink pants and do crazy things that I thought, believe it or not, at that time was racy. But I think I liked women more than I liked men, just in general. I just thought they were better. And I think I still feel that way. Of course, there are exemplary people, of every sort. But man, I just think women are where it's at. I mean, I can't believe there's not equal pay for women still.
Yeah.
Just insane for the same amount of work. I mean, that is just an embarrassment to this country. We could go on and on about that, but I was trying to embellish the answer to the question you asked, which I
absolutely. Yogi Bhajan, who brought Kundalini Yoga to the United States, and it's the lineage that I study and teach. And he said that women are 10 times stronger and 10 times more sensitive than men are, and that they are the ones that raise our children, and they're the ones who they're creating the future for us, and they are the strength, and they need what he said. He said will always be a I can't remember exactly what he said, but we'll always be sort of a not non-successful society as long if we don't celebrate the woman, if we don't support the woman, if we don't, if we do not give everything we can, love, resources, everything to these women who are creating these children who are going to be the future. Because we can create a bunch of fucked up kids, but we can also create a bunch of really healthy strong kids. They're going to lead leaders who are going to lead this world into a really powerful place where we become what you were talking about earlier, about being good to each other and serving each other in a sense. They have this word. It's called seva. Seva means to do something for somebody else. And it's a very powerful thing. It's one of the most powerful things you can do is to give to somebody in whatever way it is. A drink of water, a ham sandwich or a cup of coffee or whatever, opening a door. All of these things are the things that create the fabric of our society, and without them we're kind of screwed.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And I mean, I can think of things, just every mundane references to how we need to make a radical change and shift our perception of women. Like the worst word in the English language is the C word, presumably. Well, it doesn't apply to men unless you're in a pub in the UK and it's sort of like, dude. But if you call a guy a dick, who cares? Whatever. But so it's wrong, sweetie pie. It's wrong to have what's perceived to be the nastiest word applied to a woman, or at least not apply to a woman, because I think you could probably apply it to a man, but at least emanate from a woman. That's wrong. And think about just in the lexicon, the word hysteria. If I'm not mistaken, was, I don't know when it was added to the English language, but it applies to women who are hysterical when they're having their, when they're menstruating, or when they're and it's, I think it's somehow connected to the hysterectomy, and women are the ones that go crazy. They're the ones that are hysterical. If I'm not mistaken, it was actually taken out of the Oxford English Dictionary, or the new meaning of it, or the origins of it. Finally added. You all watching, all 9 of you, you figure it out. But hysteria has some really interesting connotations. And then again, it's just about the imbalance of. It's just about gender inequality,
Yeah. And probably there's so much gender misunderstanding. Going back to the whole 60s thing, men and women are different. And the man is more like the sun. He sits and he's like strong, unmoving, powerful, bright. He's like, he really brings the day in lots of ways. And a woman changes. A woman changes all the time, and it's a beautiful thing if you understand that's happening, and that you're a complement to each other.
Yeah. My wife, Blake, is just so much cooler than I am. It's ridiculous. She's been all over the world. She is a champion horse rider. She's an opera singer. She's an actress. She's a phenomenal mother. She's so much cooler than I am. So much tougher. Anyhow, that's my little nod to her.
Yeah.
We'll have to put a note as to when this is in the broadcast, so I can say you can just tune in at the 37th minute.
Yeah. I think I think there certainly is something to that. What you're talking about. Tune into this because I want you to hear this. I want you to hear. I put a little thing on TikTok, and I said, go to your woman and tell her how beautiful she is. And it's like, it's very simple. Lots of times as men we don't understand that there are very simple things that you can do that will make your woman feel good, and they're looking for some sort of security. They're looking they want to feel good, and it can change your life.
Yeah. I think, it applies to all of us, but you're right. I mean, I think in an interpersonal relationship, it is actually nice to remain visible.
Absolutely.
Once you are the invisible partner, it's time for some work.
Yeah. Well, Yogi Bhajan would say, then you're just a roommate, and then that's you need some work.
Well, the other thing, there's a fabulous joke about marriage that in many respects is true, sadly, but I don't know, it just says so much. And forgive me if anyone's offended by this. It's just very funny. The joke is a guy's been living with the same woman for 12 years or 15 years, whatever, and he finally marries her. And his buddies, they all say, "Hey, like, you had it all, man. Well, why'd you have to marry her? Why'd you have to do that?" He said, "Well, I couldn't hold my gas in any longer." And so there's something very beautiful about letting your hair down, so to speak, in a marriage where all bets are off. But there's also something very sadly true about that. Like, all right, I've got him or her now. Now I can really be who I am. Does that mean you were faking it for 12 years? Does that mean that it endorses the marriage because now you're truly and completely a unit and confident and able to take your hair down? I don't know, but there's something rather true and profound about that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it is a centuries-old tradition. So there's a lot of oomph behind it. There's a lot of there's a lot of just stuff, uh, it's got history, so
Yep.
so when you enter into this institution, I mean, it really is an institution, and it's going to be powerful, and it will have an effect over you.
Yeah.
Different people have a different effect, some people want to run when they, right after they
Well,
get married. Um,
when I'm reminded that I was for a brief period of time I was an agent at William Morris, and I was asked to look after some of these Borscht Belt comedians who were at the time just legendary characters. It was the early '90s, and they were friends with Norman Brokaw, who was the chairman of the company at the time. And so they thought it was, from their perspective, I was actually paying my dues, but it was really exciting for me to have an expense account to take out, Maury Amsterdam and Shecky Green and, Buddy Hackett and, I don't know who these guys. Anyhow, long story short, I endure a lot of their humor. Much of it I continue to regurgitate daily, but so much of it is misogynistic. If you think about it, just that one famous, I think it's a Henny Youngman joke. He says, "Take my wife, please."
Yeah.
That's so uncool.
Yeah.
But it's funny, and I don't see any reason why we can't turn it around on men. I mean, there is there's a funny joke that actually is technically an anti-male joke. The guy says, "My wife likes to talk to me when she's making love. Just last week, she called me from Vegas." And that's funny. Like, at least he's saying his wife is, out there and having fun without him. I don't know what my point is, but I think it was a cheap and easy way to slip in a little Borscht Belt humor.
Well, we were talking about how men and women are different, it's kind of where it came out of, and
Well, one quick joke apropos of that. 4 a.m, old man answers the phone. He says, "Hello," and the guy says, "Hey, I want to do this to you. I want to do that to you," and the dirtiest stuff you can imagine. He says, "Hold on, honey, it's for you."
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to overcome, for sure. And I mean, even if you look up the sort of the origins of the word hospitality. Hospitality meant that back in like the Middle Ages and, way back, it meant that you let somebody into your house, and everything is theirs. Everything, and that gets into some pretty sick shit, because it includes because women were pieces, they were chattel, women were possessions, and so you let somebody into your house, and suddenly they become the possessions of those people too, and so we've, just like marriage has a huge history to it, and that we're rewriting all the time, and so does this idea of hospitality. We rewrite it all the time. We don't think about that, but it's there. It's there, and it fuels. Just like, I mean, I, when I was growing up, Shecky Green, Buddy Hackett, all those guys, Buddy Hackett was doing Disney films. It's like they're all part of a not too recent, or a fairly recent history, so this is it's all still with us, and it really definitely points up the fact that we've still got we got a lot to do, a lot to just be good. We have a mantra that we recite. I do a group of, it's called the Rama Men's League, and we get together twice a week on a Zoom call. And there's a mantra we just did the last class, and the mantra is, I am man, I am good, I'm successful. and it's the most beautiful, positive kind of thing to program into your head. I'm man, I am good, I am successful. It's you don't really need a whole lot more.
Is Ren in that group?
No, he's not. That would be kind of interesting to have him in there.
Yeah, because I know he's part of a men's group. This is a 10-year-old remarkable child we both know.
Yes.
Care.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a lovely guy.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's how we met, through Ren's birthday party.
Ren's birthday party, yes.
And that's where I met your adorable little girl, who you were spending the day with because you had a 2-day-old child at the time, I think.
Yes, we did. We did. Yeah.
How's she doing?
He is doing amazing. Yes, it's a boy.
Already transition.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and he's doing great. He's growing so fast. He's becoming so aware. I don't know. We might have to cut this out of the interview. I have to tell you the story because I don't know. I don't know if I told you the story. Did I tell you the story about the birth? Well, so it's about what was it? It was about I don't know. It was in the evening, and my wife was complaining about labor, going into labor, and I said, "Well, do you think I should call the midwife?" Because we had the first we had my daughter at home, and we had planned on doing the birth at home. So she called the midwife, and the midwife said, "Well, it's the contractions are still too far apart, and they're not lasting as long as they need to be. Call me when they're a minute, at least a minute long, and they're 4 minutes apart, I think is what it is." And so I started getting closer, and so she called, and the midwife, who was up in Northeast LA, I'm in the Palisades, so it's it's a bit of a drive to get here. It's nighttime. It's not that no traffic or anything. So she starts on her way, and she calls again. My wife is like really getting into the loud shouting, and the pain is like starting to increase and increase and increase, and I'm like running back and forth getting the bedroom ready, and then coming back to her when the contractions happen and comforting her, and the midwife calls and wasn't quite sure on the instructions, and she's driving, and she's like 10 minutes away, and I come back to my wife, and she's screaming, and she stops, and she goes, "He's coming!" And I wish I had a camera for this. I said, "Well, what does that mean?" And she repeats, "He's coming!" And she lifted up the shirt that she was wearing, and he was crowning.
Wow.
And there I was, my daughter and babysitter down the hall in the bedroom, and I'm standing there, and my hands just came out like this. I mean, it was automatic, and I caught it.
That's amazing. I just got a low. On that note, I just got a low battery. Low battery situation, so I'm moving to plug it in. So that is amazing. This is obviously not a birthing podcast, but had a similar experience with my son, and long story short, we beat the doula and the doctor to the hospital, and they gave me the wrong room, and by the time I got to the room, the baby's head was coming out, and this is a 2-hour labor from start to finish.
Yeah.
And so when I wasn't in the room, the midwife, the doula, called and said, "Are you looking for street parking?" I said, "No, not, you know me so well, but I would not tonight. You just gave me the wrong room. I'm running. I'll be there." She said, "The baby's coming." Anyhow, so he came, and it was really like immediately, and just popped right out, and was really emotional, obviously, and I filmed it.
Yeah.
And anyhow, we don't need to talk about birthing much more, unless there are folks out there that are willing to pay for our new Men with Birthing Stories podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I know there's a connection between here.
Not paying, but I didn't mean to pay, guys. No, you don't have to pay.
Yeah.
Interested in listening, finding it.
Well, I've got one last question for you, Stephen. You know, before we go off, and that is, you do a lot. You're very active. You you have you have integrity. You have a lot of energy, good energy. And you're in great shape. I mean, you're in fantastic shape as far as I'm concerned.
You're very kind.
And very open to growth and changing. What do you owe this, this vitality, this success, longevity, this ability to grow and change and adapt? What do you owe that to? Do you have like a practice that you do? Do you is there something that you live by? What is it? What's your secret? What's your fountain of youth there?
You're very kind to say that. I was a marathon runner until
wow,
to beat me up. So I think thank you, by the way. I think it's important for us, if we are to be the best parents we can be, to remain as healthy and vital as we can be, to be as available for activities, and to live as long as we can for our kids. Having said that, are there quadriplegic parents that are remarkable and better than I am? Of course. But to the extent that, I have the ability to be fit, I have an obligation to be fit. And I have an obligation not to, get arterial sclerosis. I'll have a heart attack. I also, frankly, am a little bit vain. I mean, I think we all have a little vanity. I look in the mirror and I think, yeah, it's not bad, But my whole life, I've always been, I've hated to waste time. So even if I were doing something, waiting for my toast to come out of the toaster, I would do some leg lifts and kicks and dips and sit-ups or push-ups. And it drove people crazy, but I would always take time to, burn a calorie here and there. I have definitely have a sweet tooth, but but it ebbs and flows. I eat beautiful and healthy foods for the most part, but I do like some crap. I love a little bit of junk food now and then. But you are, touche, buddy. I mean, you basically, I got nothing on you. I just want to close on something that interests people other than my six-pack.
You got a third arm or something, or?
I don't know. How do you generally organically phase these babies out, besides batteries going dead?
This is it. I mean, I thank you very much. It's great to sit down and talk to you. You are all that you profess to be, and in your goodness and your growth to work on yourself, and that you've talked about here. I'm honored to have this time with you, and
well,
for
I am honored
that you're giving to me.
Given it, I'm honored that you asked, and if the ratings are through the roof, I'll come back. All the best. I wish you the best of everything.
All right. Hi, I'm Ram Dharam, and I want to thank you for joining us on Man to Man, Conversations with Extraordinary Men. I'm a men's health coach. I work with men who are dedicated to their own excellence, men who want to be vital and alert poised and powerful, potent and strong. But they might feel a little sluggish and sleepy and fatigued, numb, old, even heavy and exhausted, the loss of vitality. Or maybe they just want to feel good about themselves and be in great shape with a clear mind. I can help you if any of this rings true. DM me at Dharam Walker on Instagram, or send me a message at the email included in this video, and I'll get back to you for a free consultation call. We'll see what we can do for you. Until then, be strong, be powerful, and be happy. Your health, your well-being, and your future are in your hands. Bless you.